Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taylor Kallenberg. This is Greg Triplett. Today we're going to be talking about the Zweiers and Tavani texts. This is Zweiers chapter 7. So both Zweiers and Tavani address the concept of academic text and how to read it. More importantly, how to read with a purpose to the reading. Getting students engaged and interested in the reading. The main thing that they want to get across in both texts is giving purpose to the students so that the students understand how to read it. If they're looking for something specific, they're going to skip right to that and just speed read through the rest. So by defining that purpose for the entire text, you're giving students the opportunity to read through the text and kind of analyze what they're reading to interpret it towards the purpose that you've set. One of the factors that comes into this is teachers sometimes have read the text so many times that they keep finding new meanings to the text. And as a teacher, what we want to do is not focus on all of the meanings, but try and focus on the main ones, and that's where that purpose comes in. We want to focus on the main topics that we want the students to get out of our academic text so that they understand what they're expected to read out of it. All of this is focused on a teacher being clear on why the students are doing the reading. So students need to think that this kind of reading will improve their life somehow. Tavani talked about this and how if students think that the reading is going to improve their life somehow, even if it's a minor detail, they're going to be more interested in the reading that you've assigned for them. Tavani also talks about two different kinds of reading voices, and one of them is a reciting voice and the other one is a conversation voice. So your reciting voice is where you're reading a text, but really you're thinking about something else, and you don't really remember what you read. When you do that, then you find yourself going back and forth, trying to figure out and interpret what it is you're reading. Your conversation voice is where you're talking back to the text, or you're arguing with the author about what they're writing. You're connecting with the author, you're questioning them, or you're agreeing with what they're saying. So students need to be able to recognize the difference of their conversation and their reciting voice, because we want them as teachers to be in that conversation voice so that when they're reading, they're actually comprehending and understanding what we want them to get. So that's where that defining a purpose for the text comes into play. We want students to use that conversation voice, and that'll help them kind of predict, summarize, question, and kind of monitor their comprehension of what they're reading. And that helps us as teachers to understand what exactly they're looking for. So for the Zweiers chapter 7 and the Tavani article, we came across a self-questioning chart out of the Classroom Strategies book, and that's kind of what you're looking at here. So with that, we have creating, evaluating, analyzing, applying, understanding, and remembering. And that's something that, although they might not use those same words, both Zweiers and Tavani talk about these. And then here, this is what we call a focusing question. And you guys will all get one of these charts a little later. But it's just the question that they have defined relating to whatever the level of thinking is that we want them to focus on. Then comes into play our comprehension statement. And this is going to be a student's answer to the focusing question. So this is what we want them to get out of the reading from this question. So when they do read it, they're thinking about, okay, how has the author changed what I understand? And then what they're going to do is they're going to write their comprehension statement in here. So with that, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to walk you guys through the Tavani, or the Zweiers text, sorry. So, you guys should have all read this, which I'm sure you all did. So for the creating level of thinking, the focusing questions directly from your self-questioning chart is, how has the author changed what I understand? So for me, again, Tavani talks a lot about defining a purpose for an academic text. So for me, this would be reading academic So, reading academic text has several levels of thinking in order to comprehend text. So, how has the author changed what I understand? Zwires talks a lot about this, and for me, it's just I'm used to getting, highlight what you think is important, take notes on what you think is important, and Zwires really gives us different ways to comprehend the text. So, and there's several different levels to that. So that's the main thing for my creating. So for level of thinking, under evaluating, what perspective or authority does the author bring to what he or she is telling me? So I'll just write this one in here. So for this one, this is the main kind of perspective that I thought Zwires was trying to get across through his chapter 7. And that's just inform us as teachers how to give students the tools to comprehend academic text. So again, like I said, a lot of the stuff that I was given was, highlight your notes, take notes, or highlight your book, take notes on what you have. So for me, I think this is important for him to kind of get across that. So our next one is analyzing. And that is, how is this similar to or different from what I've heard or read before? So for me, this is different. And like I said, this is kind of where I was used to highlighting stuff. And that's kind of the tools that I was given. So, and Zwires wants us to kind of define a purpose too. So this is where kind of that speed reading comes into play, where I think about a student, or when you're looking through a phone book, you have a specific thing that you're searching for, so you skim right through and you look for that. That's where defining a purpose comes into play. Because if we're defining that purpose, then students can read throughout whatever their academic text is and find a way to relate that to what the overall purpose is that we've given them. So now we're on applying, and this is how can I connect what the author is telling me to understand something better? So for applying, to involve setting a purpose for So for me, applying this personally comes into setting a purpose for future academic text and readings. So for me, I think about kind of where Tavani, even though it's not directly related to these wires, where Tavani talked about your reciting voice and your conversation voice. So we want to be using that conversation voice when we're reading. So for me, when I apply this, I want to try and focus on using that conversation voice. So let's move on to understanding, and what does the author want me to understand? So for me, this is, as teachers, we need to give students a purpose to text. And we've been hitting on this one a lot already, but just making sure we define that purpose so that students understand what they're trying to get from the text that we have them reading. And then our last one for the self-questioning chart is remembering. And what do I need to remember to make sense of the text? So Zwires talks about this kind of in his conclusion, but it is as language develops, comprehension develops. And just remembering that language is always developing, so there's always new developments in comprehension and how we're going to do that. Zwires also talks about we as teachers want students to understand academic text to sort of help build their language that they have. And that's kind of the main purpose that he has for his reading, is just making sure that, we are letting students know that, the language and the comprehension is going to continue, and that we want them to understand what they're reading so that we can better their language in the future. So with that, I'm going to send it over to Greg, and he's going to walk you guys through the next